It was early in the morning when Keanu Reeves pulled up to a gas station, preparing for a long drive ahead. The roads were quiet, and there were only a few cars in sight. But what caught his attention wasn't the empty road or the vehicles parked. Around him, it was the young woman working tirelessly at the corner of the station. She moved with a heaviness in her steps, as if every motion carried a weight too heavy to bear. Keanu watched as she struggled to lift several buckets of water, using them to wash the cars one by one. She seemed determined, but exhaustion was written all over her face. As Keanu got out of his car, he couldn't help but notice how worn out she appeared. He made his way toward the entrance, but something pulled him back. The woman glanced up, meeting his gaze for a brief moment. Her eyes told a story of hardship, yet there was a spark of resilience in them. "Need a hand?" Keanu called out. Gently, his voice warm enough to stop her in her tracks. For a moment, the woman looked at him in surprise, as if she wasn't used to being offered help. Then she shook her head softly. "Thank you, but I'm okay," she replied, her voice quiet but kind. Keanu noticed something in her eyes, a hidden sorrow, something she wasn't saying aloud. The brief silence that followed felt heavy. His instincts told him there was more to her story than she was letting on. Without thinking, Keanu took a few more steps toward her, his curiosity getting the best of him. "It must be tough. Are you here by yourself?" he asked, his tone softer now, almost as if he could feel the weight of her burden without fully understanding it. The woman hesitated, her shoulders slumping slightly. After a deep breath, she answered, "Yeah, I'm on my own, but there's nothing else I can do." Her voice cracked just slightly, and Keanu caught it. Something unsaid was lingering beneath her words. In that moment, something inside Keanu shifted. The urge to help wasn't just an offer anymore. It felt like something he had to do. His heart clenched as he stood there, watching the woman struggle. He wasn't going to walk away from this. Keanu stood there for a moment, watching her. The air between them hung heavy, yet the stillness felt oddly comforting. There was something about her quiet strength, the way she carried herself, despite the visible exhaustion that resonated with him. He couldn't just leave her like this, not when he could do something about it. Without saying another word, he walked closer to her, his footsteps soft on the pavement. "I'm not going to just walk away," he said quietly, the words coming out more firm than he intended. "Let me help, it's the least I can do." The woman paused, looking up at him with wide eyes, as if she didn't quite believe what she was hearing. Her lips parted, ready to refuse once more, but then something changed in her expression. She closed her eyes for a brief second, as if weighing her options before offering a small nod. "I don't usually accept help," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "But thank you." Keanu didn't wait for another moment. He took the bucket from her hands and started working beside her. It was simple work, but the weight of it felt different now. Shared. As they worked side by side, Keanu glanced over at her. He could tell there was more to her than met the eye, a story she wasn't telling. "You sure you're okay?" he asked again, genuinely concerned. She gave him a small smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yeah, just a lot on my plate right now." Keanu didn't press further. Some things, he knew, were not meant to be forced out. But he kept working, moving with the rhythm of the task, hoping that somehow his presence might ease her burden. Then, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, she spoke up. "I'm pregnant and alone," she said, her voice a little shaky now. "I'm just trying to make it through each day." The words hung in the air, heavier than the buckets. They were lifting. Keanu's heart clenched, and he set the bucket down gently, turning to face her. "You shouldn't have to do this by yourself," he said softly, his tone unwavering. She shook her head. "There's no one else. I have to keep going." Keanu knew in that instant that he had to do something more. This wasn't just about helping out for a few minutes. She needed support. She needed someone to stand by her, even if only for a little while. The sun was beginning to rise higher in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the gas station as Keanu and the woman continued their work. The once heavy silence between them was now filled with an unspoken understanding, a quiet connection that seemed to grow with each passing moment. Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a chance encounter. There was something about her, the way she held herself, the way she carried her burdens, that made him feel like he needed to stay, needed to be a part of her story, even if just for today. "So, what's your name?" Keanu finally asked, breaking the silence between them. She hesitated for a second, then offered him a soft smile. "It's Lily." "Lily," Keanu repeated, nodding. "I'm Keanu, but I'm sure you knew that." Lily laughed, a sound that felt foreign but beautiful coming from her. "Yeah, I knew." The air seemed to shift as the conversation continued. For a moment, they weren't just two strangers in a gas station parking lot. They were two people sharing a quiet moment, each understanding more about the other than words could ever express. After a few more minutes of washing cars and exchanging small talk, Keanu felt a pull to go deeper, to ask more. But he didn't want to push her. He sensed that Lily was holding back, keeping her pain tucked away, only letting bits of it slip through. "I know things can feel overwhelming," Keanu said gently, breaking the silence once again. "But you don't have to do everything alone." Lily's eyes softened, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of hope in them. A small, fragile spark. "I've always been on my own," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never really had anyone who would stick around. It's easier this way." Keanu watched her carefully, understanding the weight of her words. He could see how much it had cost her to open up, even in this small way. "I get that," he said quietly. "But you deserve more than that. You deserve help when you need it. You don't have to do this by yourself." The words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, Lily didn't respond. She just stood there looking at him, as if weighing the truth of what he said. Then finally she nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know," she whispered, voice breaking. "I just don't know how to trust anyone anymore." Keanu's heart ached at the vulnerability in her voice. He reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder, offering her a comfort that words couldn't provide. "You don't have to trust me right now," he said softly. "But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Lily looked up at him, and for the first time her guard seemed to lower just a little. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Keanu gave her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to thank me. It's just what people do for each other." As they stood there, side by side, Keanu knew that this wasn't just about helping with the cars or making a kind gesture. It was about showing up for someone, being there in a way that made them feel seen, even if just for a moment. As the day wore on, Keanu and Lily finished washing the last of the cars. The station was quieter now, and the sun hung lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the pavement. Keanu wiped his brow and took a deep breath, feeling a sense of accomplishment, not just from the work they'd done, but from the unexpected bond that had formed between them. Lily, on the other hand, seemed lighter, as if a small weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She smiled at him, a real smile this time, one that reached her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "You didn't have to help me like this," Lily said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "But I can't tell you how much it means to me. I've never had anyone just be there for me like this." Keanu looked at her, his expression gentle. "Sometimes all it takes is one person showing up," he replied. "You deserve to be seen, Lily, to be heard." Her eyes filled with emotion, but she quickly looked away, trying to regain her composure. "I don't know what to say," she admitted quietly. "I've always had to take care of myself, you know, but today, I don't know. It's like you reminded me that I'm not alone." Keanu's heart swelled as he watched her, feeling a deep sense of respect for this woman who had fought so hard just to survive. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. "You've got me in your corner, and I'll be here, no matter what." The sincerity in his voice seemed to reassure her, and for the first time in a while Lily allowed herself to believe it, she let out a shaky breath, wiping her eyes quickly before offering him a smile that was full of both sadness and hope. "You're right," she said, her voice steadier now. "I don't have to do this alone." Keanu stepped back, a small smile, tugging at his lips. "That's right. You've got this, Lily. I believe in you." For a moment neither of them spoke. The world felt a little quieter, a little kinder, as they shared this unspoken understanding. In that silence, Keanu knew that he had made a difference, even if only for a single day. Lily picked up her things, her movements a little less heavy, a little more certain. As she turned to leave, she paused for a moment, looking back at him. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice full of gratitude. "I'll never forget this." Keanu nodded. "You don't have to thank me, just remember, you're stronger than you think." With that, Lily walked away, her steps a little lighter, her heart a little less burdened. And Keanu watched her go, knowing that this small act of kindness had planted a seed of hope that in time would grow into something bigger than either of them could have imagined. As Keanu watched Lily walk away, a sense of peace washed over him. The weight of the day's events, the moments shared, and the quiet connection between them settled in his chest. He hadn't expected any of this, hadn't expected to meet someone like her at a gas station on an ordinary morning. But life had a way of surprising him. The sun was beginning to set, casting a soft glow across the horizon, and Keanu stood there for a moment, taking it all in. He had come to the station looking for nothing more than a quick stop, but what he had found was something deeper, something that reminded him of the power of small gestures, of showing up for someone when they needed it most. Lily had been through so much, but he had seen something in her today, a strength, a resilience that made him believe that no matter how tough things got, she would find a way. She had the fire inside her, even if she didn't always see it. Keanu got back in his car and started the engine, but as he drove away from the station, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment wasn't just a fleeting encounter. It had changed both of them in ways that would last. The world was full of struggles and pain, but it was also full of the possibility for kindness, for connection, for healing. Lily had reminded him of that, and as he drove further down the road, Keanu smiled softly to himself. He didn't know where her journey would take her, but he hoped that wherever she went, she'd carry with her the strength to face whatever came next. And maybe, just maybe, she'd remember the stranger who showed up for her when she needed it most. Sometimes it wasn't about changing someone's life entirely. It was about giving them a moment of peace, a reminder that they weren't alone, that they were worth the effort, and Keanu knew, deep down, that he would never forget Lily either. She had made an impact on him, just as he had on her. It was a simple, beautiful exchange, a quiet act of kindness that would ripple through their lives long after the day was done.